Okay, so welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I've done a recap, but life be lifing. And so, I've been lurking. I've been on Hulu and Prime and Netflix. I've seen a series come and go, but I've really been getting into K-dramas, and I'm actually finishing up my third series. But the first series that I was able to watch from start to finish is called Marry My Husband. And so this is going to be a recap of season 1, episode 1. So if you are interested in hearing what I have to say, stay tuned. So Jinwon and Minwon are getting married. They've been together for a while, so of course it's the next step in the relationship. Everyone seems happy. Some of their co-workers even came out. Even Jinwon's best friend, who's also a co-worker, Sunmi, is her maid of honor. And so it seems like everyone is having a great time, except Minwon's mother, who you could clearly see that she's not happy with her son's choice and bride. And, she even takes the time to insult her while they're still standing at the altar. So after the wedding, they move in, or they're living with Minwon's parents. And Minwon's mother is tearing in to Jinwon over this child issue, or whether or not they're going to have children, or why they haven't had children, or why she's not pregnant yet, or whatever the case may be. All the while, Minwon is just sitting there drinking his coffee, scrolling on his cell phone. So one day, Jiwon comes home and she finds out that her husband has decided to quit his job to become a day trader. And of course, she's upset because she feels like, well, this is something that we should have discussed. And him, being who he is, the selfish, nasty, self-involved person that he is, basically told her that he doesn't have to clear anything with her. And so in the next clip, we see she's at work and she's being berated by her manager, who gets off on humiliating his subordinates. She turned in a proposal. He didn't like the proposal, so much so that he pretty much threw the paper in her face and basically told her to do it over. And so as she knelt down to pick up the paper, her nose started bleeding. So now we see whatever's going on with her is progressing. Unfortunately, she goes to the doctor and she's diagnosed with stomach cancer. So of course, Minwon and his mother makes it all about how her diagnosis is affecting them, because at this point, obviously, she's the only person with a job because he quit his job to be a day trader. So now we fast forward, she's in the hospital and she's getting treatment. So Sumi went up to see her and basically professed how she don't know what she would do if anything ever happened to her, and how much she cares for her. And Jiwon basically tells her that she has a feeling that her husband is having an affair, and she basically explains to her how she knows her husband is having an affair. So at some point during the day, the office administrator comes up to her and basically said that you're behind on your payments. We would need payment in full, or you would have to leave the hospital. So of course she's calling her husband, because obviously this is something that he is supposed to take care of, and she cannot get him on the phone. And so she ends up having to leave the hospital. And so the cab driver is very caring and compassionate, and he, basically said that she doesn't look well, and he was trying to, offer her some words of encouragement. But Jiwon has basically resigned herself to her fate. She knows she is, seriously ill, and, she doesn't expect to survive much longer. So as they were approaching a fork in the road, he basically told her that at the end of her journey that she would have a lot more clarity. And so he chose to take the other road. And so they ended up going through this long tunnel. And when they came out on the other side, it was, it went from a very kind of dim, gloomy kind of a situation to this bright and lively. I mean, the trees are beautiful and in bloom. And he basically was telling her that there is no one way to accomplish something. And so they pull up to her apartment and she pays him what little cash she has. But he decided, he said, you know what, this is my last day as a driver. I'm retiring. And so he gave her the folded up bill back, and he went on his way. So she made her way into her apartment, and what does she see? She see her best friend, who was professing all this love and care for her, and her husband in bed together. So of course she confronts them. She's weak from treatment, so she's really not in a position to really defend herself. An altercation ensues, and Minwan pushes her, and she falls through a glass table and expires. So she wakes up, so to speak, 10 years in the past. So this is before her illness, before her and Minwan married. And so she's at work, she's standing in the office, and she's having a conversation with someone. But you could see her eyes are glazed over because she's still trying to figure out what is going on. And her vision is kind of blurry. And so when she's able to focus, she realized that she's having a conversation with Minwan, and she goes crazy. It's to the point where she is running behind him. She is trying to kill this man in the office. Her boss, not only the boss, the owner of the company walks over. He intervenes to break up the fight, and he basically tells her that she needs to get a hold of herself. So she storms off, and the boss runs after her to make sure that she's okay. And of course, he's asking her, like, what was that about? What is going on? And of course, she's still dazed and confused because she's not even sure what is going on, where she is, what's happening. So she couldn't really answer the question. So her facial expression said it all. Like, she really didn't have any answers because she just was confused. So he ends up taking her home. And he gave her a few dollars. And of course she was confused, like, why are you giving me this? And then he had to remind her that you left your cell phone and your purse and everything back at the office. And they said their goodbyes, and she went into the apartment. So it's later in the evening, and she's, sitting at her dining room table, and she's still trying to come to terms with what's going on with her. And so she pulls out the cash that her boss gave her, and the folded bill fell out that was given to her by the taxi driver. And she noticed that there was a little heart drawn on the bill. And she had a flashback of a time when her father would do that. And she realized that her savior that day was her guardian angel, which was her father. And she got really emotional. Okay, so there's a knock at the door, and it's Minwan wanting to talk. And so they go out to a spot to sit down and talk. And so now he's basically asking her, because apparently she's been having these stomach issues for a while. And they thought that she was pregnant. And so he thought that her behavior that day was a result of her being pregnant. And when she told him that she wasn't pregnant, that it's gastritis, the look of relief that went across his face, right? And then he proceeded to tell her that you're getting older, so you probably don't want to have children, and you need to keep working. And so she's now realizing that this was a grift from the beginning. Like, he was just a piece of crap, and all the red flags that she missed before is now is painfully clear to her. And so at the end of the conversation, she basically told him that the relationship was over and that she didn't want to be with him anymore. And then, of course, he got violent. He ended up grabbing her and slamming her up against the wall, and just he had lost it. So they end up at the police station, and the police basically said that they're not going to get involved because the minute I do something to your boyfriend, then you're going to be screaming and carrying on. And basically, they just didn't feel like the headache of getting into dealing with a domestic situation. So they eventually leave the police station. She ends up going home. So as she's sitting at home, she's kind of going through her finances and realizing what kind of the mess that she's in. Minwan has maxed out her credit cards. He owes her a bunch of money. It's just like she's trying to figure out how she's going to, keep her head above water. And so I believe it was a news story on TV about a particular stock. And she had a flashback of her previous life where she came home and he told her that she was going to be a day trader. And he mentioned a particular stock that was going to be big. And so she realized that, wait a minute, I actually know of a lot of stocks. I don't know a lot about the stock market, but I know about a lot of companies that are going to do very well in the future. And so what little money she had, she started to invest. And so the next day she went to the bookstore to get more, information on investing. And so she ran into her boss, and of course he, was asking her if she was okay, and this, that, and the third. And she offered to take him to lunch as a thank you for, looking after her. So they're sitting down there, enjoying their soup. He takes his glasses off, and like she looks up at, and she's seeing him for the first time, like, oh my God, he's so dreamy. And she noticed that he has a burn on his arm. And she realized that it is the exact same scar in the exact same place that she had on her arm in her past life. And so while they were talking, Sumin, her BFF, called her, but of course she just let it go to voicemail. And Sumin is trying to figure out, why is she not answering the phone? Da, 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 da. So they have continued their conversation. And as they were leaving, he saw some of the books that she had purchased, and it was something about family planning or family and children or something to that effect. And, he basically, said that, family is important and children is important, but you're a very talented, intelligent woman, and, we would hate to lose you, talking about his company. So the next day, Ji-won is doing everything she can to avoid Min-won. She walks in, she sees him standing at the elevator, she did a U-turn right and proper, right? So she would rather walk up 19,000 steps than to be in an elevator alone with him. The potential of being alone with him in an elevator. So she finally makes it to her desk, and he's trying to get her attention because they sit across from each other at work. And she's ignoring him. So then he starts messaging her, telling her that he sold a bunch of stock, and one of the stocks he sold was the one that she knows is going to be very big in the future. And he actually purchased the stock that she knows is going to be a bust in the future. Did she say anything? Absolutely not. So before you know it, Sue Min comes over and practically scares her. She looks like a psychopath, and she's kind of just staring at her for a minute. And then she starts asking her, well, why didn't you call me back? So Ji-won was basically saying, well, I got caught up in this blog where this woman was talking about how her best friend was sleeping with her husband. And of course, Sumin is like, oh my God, that is so disgusting. How could she do that to her friend? So now she has to present her proposal to their manager, who we've already established likes to humiliate his subordinates. So of course, he's telling her it's trash. And she's it's another flashback of, in the past life, she gave this proposal to Sumin to look over because she wanted a second opinion. Sumin actually took her proposal, submitted it as her own, and that is how Sumin became transitioned from a contractor to a full-time employee, right? So, but in this timeline, she's handing in this proposal, and he hates it, right? He's telling her that she needs to do it over. So eventually she's in the kitchen. I think she was getting something off the copier, and the assistant manager Yang, who was actually the brains behind the department, because she basically does all the work, and the idiot manager who's incompetent gets all the credit. And Ji-won is actually basically talking about how she was actually up for that position, but he basically dogged her out to the higher ups, which is why he got that position as a manager, and she's the assistant manager. So she was there making her a cup of coffee. She gets called away for a meeting, and she puts the mug on the counter, not paying attention that she left it teetering on the edge. Ji-won then has a flashback of the exact same thing that happened in her past life, but in that scenario, she tripped over the boxes for the copy paper, and she injured her knee. This time she was able to, avoid that accident and stop the mug from falling over. Unfortunately, in her attempt to get away from Min-won, she ends up crashing into a cart, and so she still ends up injuring her knee. And so she's now back at her desk, and she's realizing that things are still happening that happened before, but they're just happening in a different way. And so she's realizing that she's going to have to do some things different. So the manager ends up calling a team meeting, so they're all moving towards the conference room. Sumin walks over, and she's walking with Ji-won, and basically Ji-won turns to her and says, I need your help with something. And so of course she looked confused. She's like, what? I need your help taking out the trash. And so Sumin eventually agrees to help her take out the trash. What Sumin doesn't really know at this point is that her and Min-won are the trash that she wants to take out. So Superman goes bops into the conference room, and she sits right next to Minwon, and they're laughing. And Ji-won is still standing outside, and she's watching this interaction. And she basically was like, "You coveted my trash, you could have it." So this is a very good series. If you want me to do a recap of the remaining episodes, like I said, it's a long series. It's like 20 some odd episodes. Each episode is like an hour, 10 minutes long. So I'll try to condense it down as much as I can, but it's worth the watch, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.